Papargyriou Winery. It's a small-sized family winery founded in 1979 by Aristides Papargyriou, a young man who had the ambition to make high-quality wines. And after studying at the Agricultural University of Athens, he selected a vineyard in Corinthia, which is a region on Peloponnesus, about 120 kilometers to the west of Athens. And he planted the first vineyards in 1979. Since then, the winery has grown and now produces around 55,000 bottles from two vineyards. One is in the village of Lalioti, about 5 kilometers from the Gulf of Corinth. The other is a mountainous vineyard at 800 meters, also in Corinthia. We cultivate about 10 different varieties, some of them experimental, and some are well known for us since we cultivated from the beginning. And we are currently exporting to 8 countries. I'm Yannis Papargyriou. I'm the winemaker and manager of the winery, and I'm now the second generation with my wife Eleni. And the third generation, our children, are coming to the business, to the winery, and in a couple of years, I think they will join us. We are producing different wines, both white and red. The whites are a blend made from Muscat and Assyrtiko called Papargyriou Blanc. Then we have an oaked Chardonnay. We have an Assyrtiko from the vineyard at 800 meters. And we also have a demi-sweet wine made from Muscat that is harvested late. And so the wine is called late harvest. Then we have the red wines, which are a blend based on Cabernet Sauvignon with some Mavro Daphne and some Touriga Nacional. We have 100% Syrah, and also some other wines in smaller batches, like dry Mavro Daphne, like a Nebbiolo from Greece, Naiorgitiko, the traditional grape of our region. And the winery is now we have planted new vineyards in the last 3 years, and now we are starting to build a new wine cellar, which will be ready in 2020. And so in 1979, he planted his first vineyard. He took plants from Porto Carras, which made the best white and red wine of that period. And he selected the grapes like Assyrtiko, like Athiri, Cabernet Sauvignon, and later, a couple of years later, he found the Muscat from the area of Patras, which is a small-berried Muscat, white small-berried Muscat. And later, I studied myself in Athens at the same university as my father. And after graduating, I went to Germany to continue my studies. And when I returned, I started working at the winery. And since then, we have increased the production. And I think also the quality has risen. And now we are producing a lot more. We have reached now 55,000 bottles. We invested a lot of money and energy in our vineyard at Sofiana. Sofiana is a small village in Corinthia, in mountainous Corinthia, at 800 meters, because the place there has is less hot than the coastal area, and has gives the vine the possibility to mature later and better. So it keeps the aromatic components and the acidity, so the wine have more focus, more clarity. And from this vineyard we get the Cabernet Sauvignon, the Syrah, the Muscat, the Assyrtiko, and now we have planted also Mavro Daphne, which is a grape I believe strongly it's the next big thing of the Greek red wines, and as a dry, in a dry version, of course. And there is also a new grape called Mavrostifo, which means black and tannic. And we work with that grape too. And we are the only ones producing it in Greece. And now we planted since 2017, 5 hectares. And we are planning to build a new winery near our house with new cellars to bring all these grapes. My wife is helping me, is part of this job too, of the winery too, and our children want to continue, and already our son is studying agriculture like his father, mother and grandfather. And so we want to establish a tradition and something that will last and evolve in the next decades, if not centuries. And my intention is to have high quality wines, either white or red, and every bottle of Papargyriou wine will be something that gives the consumer satisfaction and pleasure. We use now 3 white grapes. One of them is the Muscat, the small berried Muscat, which we vinify as a dry wine with Assyrtiko. Assyrtiko is Greece's best grape, one of the best in the world, according to many people, not just Greeks. And we make a blend where the Muscat gives more fragrance, more aromatic components, and the Assyrtiko gives more acidity, more body. So we combine them, and the result is a very popular and successful wine, the Papargyriou Blanc. And from the Muscat, we make also a late harvest version, which is demi-sweet, not too sweet. So you can enjoy it also with some cheese or with some fruits or alone after the meal, but it's not heavy and not too sweet, so not cloyingly sweet. Then we have a new variety called Gustolidi or Vostilidi. We planted this in 2019, so just a couple of months ago. And it's a very interesting grape and promising. We'll see what it will give in 2021, which will be the first vintage we're going to harvest. And the other grape we are working with is the Chardonnay. It's cultivated in a very cool spot in Corinth at 700 meters. So it's a place where the acidity remains high, the maturity is going slowly, and we don't have cooked aromas or anything. We have freshness and the texture of the Chardonnay. The red wines are made from the following grapes. We have the Agorgitiko or St. George grape, which is the traditional grape of northern Peloponnesus, coming from the area of Nemea, but we cultivate it near our house in the village of Lalioti. And the second is the Mavrodaphne grape, which we used to give the sweet wines, Mavrodaphne of Patras and Mavrodaphne of Kefalonia. But Mavrodaphne as a dry wine is very interesting because it has its own taste, and that is something very difficult to find in the modern world. Distinctive, unique taste. It doesn't have a lot of alcohol. It can develop and last longer than you would think when the wine is young. So for me, the Mavrodaphne in a dry version is the equivalent of a Cabernet Franc made in Greece. We have a new variety called Mavrostifo, which means black and tannic. It's a very intense wine, full-bodied, with a lot of tannins, black color, and we started cultivating it in 2016, and we believe that this wine can be the Greece's answer to heavy, strong wines from other countries. Could be something like a Greek Petit Verdot. It has huge potential. We use also some international varieties like the Syrah. Syrah grows at 900 meters. It is a late harvested Syrah with a lot of body, a lot of power, a lot of flavor, and it has, as I said, full body, and is a wine that resembles the Rhone Valley, but with an Australian touch. So it's a combination of both, old world and new world, because we are in a hot region, but it's a cool climate terroir. Then we have the Cabernet Sauvignon, which is grown also at 850 meters, and is also late harvested, also made in the same style as the Syrah, and harvested around October 10, kept for a long time in barrels, and then combined with Mavrodaphne and Touriga Nacional. This is a special grape for our winery. The Touriga Nacional, we have a small parcel, and it gives the blend more complexity. And there is also another grape, which is the Nebbiolo grape, something that we enjoy in Italy, in Piemonte, and we brought it here and have a small parcel. And this Nebbiolo grape can compete with the wines of Piemonte. You just have to try it. For me, it's normal and logical that there should be some variation depending on the vintage, because wine for us is not an industrial product. It's more artwork. So you cannot make the same wine, exactly the same wine, in two vintages. And the consumer, the wine lover, should expect that and should appreciate that, and not expect the wine to be 100% like it was last year. And you cannot jump into the same river twice. It's always something new and different. The variation is bigger in extreme weather conditions that we have once in 5 or 10 years. If we have a very hot year or a very rainy vintage, but in general we have the same style and it's the same vineyard, same terroir, and that minimizes the differences. I would say that the varieties that are earlier mature have less variation than the varieties that must stay longer on the vine, because we can have late rains, late September, early October, that affect the outcome. But in general, I would say that we have a small variation that is, for me, completely acceptable, should be acceptable. The region where we live and cultivate our grapes is not, was never a center for producing wine. It was more a center for olive trees and table grapes. And we are not in a major viticultural zone. On the other hand, that doesn't mean that it's not a very beautiful place to make wine, because Greece is mostly undiscovered yet. We have to understand that in Greece we had a long period where the wine production went into like a winter sleep, because we had the Turkish occupation, and during these 400 years people could not afford to buy wine, to produce wine. They had to survive. And after the liberation from the Turks in 1830, they started to build a new life and to produce crops that would help them survive, like wheat, like cereals in general, and olives that gave them olive oil. And there was no potential, there was no middle class or high class people that could afford to buy high quality wine. This started in Greece after the Second World War, especially after the 70s. And the Greek wine revolution that started in the 80s is a result of this prosperity. And I strongly believe that in the next decades, Greece is going to produce even better wines, and that people from all around the world have now understood that Greece isn't just Retsina or the cheap wine that they drank in the taverna or when they made vacation in Greece, or when they visited the old Greek restaurants and taverna in countries like Germany, the USA, Canada, or others. Greece has made huge steps forward and is going to show everybody that there was a reason why the Greek wines were so famous from the ancient times. I think that each variety should be treated separately, different than the other. Each one has its own needs, its own requirements, its own problems. So we try to adjust to every variety, not to make the same wine, don't have the same style for all our wines, because we have to respect what each variety is capable to do. With grapes like Cabernet Sauvignon, like Syrah, like the Mavrostifo I mentioned, we are treating them like full-bodied wines, very complete, very rich wines, while other wines, such as Agorgitiko or Mavrodaphne, are more fruity, more easy to drink. The same is for the white wine. We have the dry blend of Muscat and Assyrtiko, which is made in a fresh style with the intention to give a wine that is drunk easily, and people will enjoy it without being too, how can I say that? Αυτό πρέπει να το ξαναπώ μάλλον.
Like two different, ξέρω.
Όχι, να μην προβληματιστούν τόσο πολύ. Δηλαδή να προσπαθώ να βρω τη λέξη τώρα. Θα το πω πάλι στην αρχή. Όχι. For example, we have the Muscat and Assyrtiko blend, the Papargyriou Blanc, which is treated in a way that makes the wine more fresh and more aromatic and meant to be drunk young, while other wines like the Chardonnay or the Roi de Montagne Assyrtiko are heavier wines, more structured and meant to be drunk in a longer period and to develop in the bottle as well as in the barrel. And these wines are staying longer time on the lees, something that gives them more structure, as I said, and more power. And so each variety should be treated according to the weather conditions of a specific vintage. We cannot, in a poor vintage, in a very rainy vintage that gives the vines, the grapes, very few phenols, you cannot expect to make a century wine of the century. You have to make a wine that is lighter because the vintage leads you there. So we try to respect the nature because we depend on what nature gives us. We cannot force things. We have to adjust and not make nature adjust to us. I think life is something very precious, very short, and we have to find, as in wine, we have to have balance. The most important thing in life, as in wine, is to find the balance between creating, between raising children. For me, it's something very important, and is something that gives me a purpose in my life. And of course, the third element, which is also very important, is to find joy and pleasure, because life is short and we should enjoy every moment. Drinking beautiful wine with it, but we should not, as in wine, we should not make a wine that has too much tannin, too much acidity, or too much alcohol, or too much aromatic component. We have to find there the balance that gives the consumer the pleasure to enjoy a glass of wine. We have two different soils. Near our house, the older vineyard is a calcareous soil, has about 60 to 65% calcium, and it's a calcareous marl. This gives wines with nice structure and very complex aromatic profile. And this is a place that was a long time ago under the sea level. So it was sea and then again earth and sea, so it changed a lot. The other vineyard is largely clay with some sand. So this gives more heavy wines, more intense wines, and meant to be longer lived than the other vineyard. I like to travel a lot, and most of the money I can spare is used for traveling with my family or with friends. Since I was a child, my parents made a trip every year, and we were 2 weeks together traveling from one place to another, and we were seeing new things, and it helped us open our eyes to new ideas, to new visions. And that's something I did with my children, and I continue to do so with the children, with friends, with my wife, and this is something very important for me. I enjoy listening to music, especially classic music, and I like very much in the summer to go swimming, and in the winter to go hunting, and used to play basketball, but now I don't have a lot of time. I would like to, perhaps in the next years when the children take control of the winery, I'll have more time to do things I like. About 15 years ago, in 2003, I was in London visiting friends, and we went to a shop, and my best friend Cosmas made a present. It was a book that changed my whole attitude, my whole how I see wine. It was the book of Robert Parker, Bordeaux, and I knew Parker as a name, of course, but I have never read his book or his critics, and it was for me a revelation. It was a new world, not because someone as important and influential as Parker had written those things, but the description, the history of Bordeaux, the names, the wines, their long history, that was so fascinating, and it gave me the initiative, the pulse, to pursue an even better quality every year. This was for me a turning point, and all the decisions made in the years after that had their origin in this particular book and in these stories of the legendary men and women who made wine what is today. And I think this moment is the most important in my whole career. As I said, we stand here alone because it's not a major zone. I think we are producing wines that have our own style, And the majority of our fellow winemakers and the other wineries are producing wines of a different style. For example, we have the Roi de Montagne line, which is the Syrah, the Cabernet Sauvignon with Mavro d'Afflin, Touriga Nacional, and the Assyrtiko. And this Roi de Montagne should be out of fashion because they are strong, heavy wines with a lot of alcohol, a lot of body, a lot of tannins. And the wine critics say, oh, these wines are out of date. They should be replaced by more fruity, easy to drink wines. But these wines are the wines that made us so popular in Greece, in special circles at least. And we have our own philosophy and our own style that is different than the majority. And perhaps this gives us more attention and helps us. Because we don't follow trends or fashion. We do what we believe is right. Not what the today's fashion is. The most important thing I would like to emphasize and say again perhaps is what I told you earlier, that for me winemaking is something like making art. It's not something that can be measured or be like an industrial product, like producing spaghetti or producing let's say textiles or something. It's like making art, like a paint, like a poem, something like that. So winemaking is something unique, and we have few opportunities in our lifetime as winemakers to make the best wine we can in a given specific vintage. And you have to remember that not all vintages are the best, have the best conditions. So you have very, very few vintages where you can prove, first of all, to yourself and then to the whole world that you are really good. And so when people open a bottle of our wine, should remember that this bottle has all our sentiments, all our knowledge, all our love for the wine, and it's a product made with a lot of love and should enjoy it, I think, and will enjoy it. It's very important to remember that this family is making wine not just to make money and to be successful as business, but also because we love making and drinking and enjoying wine. So if you come visit us, you like the wines, you taste it, and you come back home and you want to find these wines, you can check out and find them at GreekWineTrips.com and buy it there and enjoy it also at home.